Hello, this is my recorded report. I will be talking about security attack and defense methods in the banking industry, focusing on these four methods. A bit of an overview. So, in our world, of course, we see an increase in the usage of online banking, and thus also it leads to an increase in cyber threats. And of course, with financial incentives involved, the hackers are very motivated to do good for themselves and cause financial losses and reputation damage for the big banking institutions. And banks also have a huge responsibility to protect sensitive customer data. And so the four common security attacks that we may see hackers use are SQL injection, cross-site scripting, man-in-the-middle, and shell injection. So let's talk a bit of an overview about each of them. SQL injection occurs when attackers insert malicious SQL code into input fields, and it allows them to manipulate the database and access sensitive data, like through the login process. Cross-site scripting allows attackers to inject malicious scripts into web applications, which are then executed in the user's browser, and it could potentially steal session cookies or credentials. Man-in-the-middle attacks are more of a social one, where the attackers will intercept communications between a customer and a bank, and it allows them to eavesdrop on important information and manipulate data on their own. And shell injection occurs when attackers exploit vulnerabilities in the system to execute like arbitrary commands, and it gives them control over the systems. So for SQL injection attacks, my approach is to use prepared statements to ensure that SQL code is pre-compiled, separating the code from the user's input, and it will prevent like malicious intent from malicious inputs from the hackers to be executed as the proper SQL commands. Parameterized queries will be used to bind user inputs as parameters rather than directly embedding it into the SQL statements, and it will like make the data more strict. Input validation will ensure that data entered by the user meets expected formats and types, and it will fill out the harmful inputs, hopefully. And so this was my Python code. Let me quickly paste it into Python. So here we may see with the test data and how the code will respond to the test data. And so the pros of SQL injection attacks, the pros of this approach, by using prepared statements and parameterized queries, the system can effectively like neutralize the threat of SQL injection and restricting the database permissions and ensuring that even if a breach occurs, the damage is contained. I think I'll just probably talk about the cons because I've talked about the pros as I was explaining. So the cons: legacy systems that lack support for prepared statements may require additional efforts to mitigate the vulnerabilities. Misconfigured permissions can lead to like exposed sensitive data, and it will like lead the way to like a bad setup. This approach will also require developers to follow secure coding practices rigorously, which might not work always. And large-scale databases will need extensive testing, and it could be very resource and time intensive. So to cross-site scripting, my approach will use escaping user input to ensure that any special characters in the user input, such as like a greater than sign, will be converted into HTML equivalents, and it will prevent them from being interpreted as HTML or JavaScript. Content security policy will allow us to control which scripts can run on our web applications. For instance, we can block inline scripts or restrict script sources to trusted domains. HTML sanitization involves removing or neutralizing harmful content within user inputs. And the code will be in the written report. The cons of this include, like, if improperly implemented, the sanitization can lead to vulnerabilities being exploited even further. Overly strict content security may disrupt legitimate functionalities, and so it has to have a balance. Attack patterns may evolve by the hackers, and so we have this method would have to continuously update itself. No, not itself. People will have to put effort into continuously updating the defense mechanisms, and the integration of these measures into both the front end and back end systems will likely cause a lot of complexity. Onto man-in-the-middle attacks. We can defend this by enforcing HTTPS with TLS, and so this will prevent the attackers from intercepting or tampering with the data exchange. Certificate pinning ensures that only specific and trusted certificates are accepted by the application, and only the legit stuff is allowed. Secure key exchange mechanisms are key exchange protocols like the Diffie-Hellman ensure that encryption keys are securely shared between parties without being intercepted. And the cons for this approach may include expired or incorrectly configured certificates may lead to disrupted service availability, and that will take some management to figure out. The TLS handshake process can slightly increase communication latency, which could negatively impact the user experience. Implementing certificate pinning is technically demanding and needs a regular maintenance, and educating users to recognize phishing attempts is very hard. Finally, onto shell injection. Input sanitization ensures that all user inputs are validated and sanitized, so just like the XSS method. Using secure APIs, such as the Python library called subprocess, it will ensure that only the controlled parameters are used. Least privilege principle means applications are run with the minimal permissions required, and it will limit the potential damage from the vulnerabilities that can be exploited by a big extensive system. The cons of this include input sanitization. While they are effective, they may be meticulously implemented to avoid lapses that the attackers could exploit. Using secure APIs may reduce flexibility, especially for legacy systems. Permission restrictions can create additional challenges for system administrators and users, and the dynamic nature of threats may require the methods to be continually updated. So again, it may take a lot of effort to keep up with the hackers. And that's it. Thank you very much.